Hi YouTube, it's Lewis with Rosebuds Travels.
And I'm Katie with Rosebuds Travels.
Yeah, and today we're going to talk about our trip that we previously took. That was a 2-month long trip, and we covered 8,900 miles.
960 miles.
Okay, 960 miles. And what we're going to do is we're going to go over what stuff cost to give you an idea of how much a trip like this could possibly cost you if you took a trip tomorrow. So,
right.
Go ahead, Katie.
And your mileage will vary. Your costs will vary. This is kind of a breakdown of what our costs were. So the first thing to know is that we were traveling for a total of 61 days. We left early in the morning on May 3rd, and we arrived back home on July 1st, I think it was.
Yeah,
like there. July 1st. It was a total of 61 days of travel, 60 nights.
Right.
And, all right, we traveled through 16 states, starting with Texas, then going through New Mexico, into Arizona, north into Utah, across Nevada, into California, then north into Oregon, and then Washington State. Then we headed back east through Idaho, then into Montana, North Dakota, Wyoming, South Dakota, and then headed south by way of Nebraska and Kansas and Oklahoma and back to Texas.
Correct.
So kind of a big circle. 61 days of driving, and like Lewis said, 7,960 miles.
Right.
So what you need to know is that we started this in May 2022 and ended at the very beginning of July 2022. This being the time in U.S. history when gas was probably the most expensive it's been and will be for some time, because at this point the cost of gas has gone down a bit. First, I'll say how much the miles cost us. We bought 550, almost on the dot, gallons of fuel on this trip. Our average price per gallon was $4.62. And right now, I believe gas is down in the, it's below $3.50 a gallon on average. So we paid $1 more per gallon than we would pay if we were to take this trip starting now.
Yeah.
Our average miles per gallon was 14.47 miles per gallon, which means our fuel cost per mile was about 32 cents.
Yeah.
Our total amount spent on gas was $2,542.24.
Yep.
So that's the cost of traveling that many miles, not counting vehicle repairs or any work done to the vehicle. That's just the cost for fuel.
Right.
And as it turns out, we had some repairs when we got back that
Right.
would have added quite a bit to the cost. But this is just the cost of the
Right.
of the travel.
And we did some maintenance stuff when we got back.
Right. So that's the cost of.
And we have a 2018 Kia Sorento, all-wheel drive, 5,000 pound towing capacity. So that gas mileage is with that car. So your mileage may vary depending on vehicle that you're towing with.
Yeah, it surely would.
Right.
It surely
So,
would.
depends.
But you can safely say if you get about 14.5 miles per gallon
Right.
and you did this same trip, you would consume about 550 gallons of gas. That's
Right.
what you'd come close to.
Right.
We did find that the car got better gas mileage when we were using gas that did not have ethanol added or had lower ethanol.
Right.
We noticed particularly in the Midwestern states like Nebraska and Kansas, the gas that we bought there, we had to be conscious about buying the gas that did not have ethanol in it
Yes.
because our mileage dropped to about 12 miles per gallon
Yes.
when we had high octane.
And
High ethanol.
in those states, they seem to mess around with the amount of ethanol that is in their regular fuel. And most stations do sell ethanol-free fuel, and I think they do it for that reason. Here in Texas, in Houston, well, not here, but at home, we all of our gas has some ethanol in it. Most stations don't have ethanol-free gas, so we're used to the gas typically because we travel a fair amount in Texas. So, but we really noticed it in the Midwestern states where it seemed like the amount of ethanol was being upped in regular fuel, and it made our gas mileage go down.
We did for about 4 tanks worth of gas do some comparison. One of the things I do when we travel is I keep track of our expenses. I have a notebook and I write down everything that we spend and make a note of whether we paid cash for it or put it on a debit or a credit card. I keep notes about how many miles traveled when we get gas, and how much we spent on the gas. And so I have as accurate a record as I can make in our expenses. And so that's what we're sharing with you is what our record is. So that is the cost of fuel as we experienced it on this trip.
Right.
And so then the next highest expense actually would be food, but I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about camping. We stayed at, over the 60 days that we camped, we stayed at 35 locations, including 5 KOAs, 2 private campgrounds, 5 state parks. We mooch docked 3 times, staying with family or close friends. We stayed at 4 national parks. We visited, I think, 6 or 7 national parks, but we stayed at 4, camped at 4. We stayed at 2 Boondockers Welcome and 2 Harvest Hosts. We dispersed camped at 1 location and stayed at 4 national forests and 2 COEs, Corps of Engineers.
Right.
And we camped at 5 city or county parks. The most expensive stays in terms of dollar amount spent would be the KOAs and the private campgrounds. And for the KOAs were 8 nights of KOA and 5 nights at private campgrounds. The most expensive one was a private campground in California, and it's not one we would recommend staying at again.
No.
Let's see. The mooch docking, while we didn't pay any money to stay, it was a total of 10 days total. Our actual cost was higher because we took people out to eat and did special treats, which we didn't do in other places. So the mooch docking was not an inexpensive thing to do because we wanted to repay people for
Right.
providing us with a place to stay.
Right.
So,
We were taking people out to eat and stuff to kind of help.
so mooch docking may not be your cheapest route
No, it
to go.
isn't. It isn't always.
But that said, it was one of the best parts of our trip.
Right.
So that was a lot of fun. And then the national parks, we wouldn't have missed them for the world. We spent 11 nights at national parks, and was a highlight. And the state parks were
They were all
great
good.
too.
Yeah, they
we
were all
didn't
good.
stay in any place that was bad.
No.
The Boondockers Welcome were really good. Both of them were in Nevada, which is kind of hard to find a good camping place in northern Nevada. So we were very grateful we could make use of Boondockers Welcome, and the people were friendly, and our stays there, they were short, just one night, very pleasant.
Right.
Dispersed camping, we spent 3 nights dispersed camping in the Badlands, and I would recommend that to anybody. That was terrific.
It was awesome.
And the National Forest camping was solidly good.
Yeah.
Not fancy, but good. And
Right.
the COEs were practical and good. The ones that we stayed at were not terribly scenic, I would say, but they were nice enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and the city and county parks, a couple of them were just kind of serviceable, and a couple of them were just fantastic places to camp.
Right. And they're what I would call a hidden gem,
Right.
because they generally aren't very expensive, but they're usually located in a town on a route. It may not be like on an interstate particularly, but we weren't always traveling on interstates anyway. We kind of like seeing the countryside a bit, so it did not bother us to be on smaller roads. And then those city and county parks were on our route, and so we didn't have to go out of the way to get to them. And they're all, on the honor system where you go there and you pay. And
Particularly in the Midwest, those are good places to stay.
Yes.
Particularly in the Midwest.
Right.
We did have a couple of things happen that altered our plan because of weather in the Pacific Northwest. We had planned to stay at a private campground, I believe, or was it a city campground
No, it was
in Washington?
That's a county park.
A county park. So we had planned, one of our mooch docks was actually going to be staying at a county park, and we were notified the day we were traveling that because of weather, the park was expected to flood, and so they were canceling all those reservations. And so we scrambled, and we were able to mooch dock in a place where usually you wouldn't be able to mooch dock.
Right. Exactly. Not very easily.
Yeah, my cousin called around and made arrangements, and we managed to pull off
Right.
a very
Kind of
quick
stealth
save on that.
mooch stocking.
A stealth mooch stock would be the best way to describe
Right.
it. But it all worked out.
Yeah, it worked
It
out
all
good.
worked out. And so, any rate, so the cost of campgrounds, the total we spent, and so this includes 60 nights of camping in various types of location. Some of them no cost, some of them relatively low cost, and then some kind of a premium price. And a premium price, I would say, would be in the $80 to $100 a night.
Right.
And those $80 to $100 a night will mess up your budget really fast if
Sure
you have
will.
many of those. So the total cost was $1,425.57.
Okay.
So, which works out to $23.76 per night.
Okay.
Not a bad average.
No, that's not a bad average.
If we didn't do KOAs and private
You could bring
campground,
it down.
we'd be below $20 a night on our camping.
Yeah, you could bring it down a lot.
So, interestingly enough, while I was doing all this figuring, the next topic is groceries and meals. Now, you have a lot of control in this area. You can choose to eat out every meal
Right.
or most meals,
Right.
or you can choose to eat in every meal and be very frugal with your grocery budget. One of the things I did notice was that the amount that we paid for groceries in general, like basic items, say I'm buying yogurt or milk or particular fruits or vegetables, I noticed that in Texas we paid a lot less than we did in as we headed west. The further west we went, the more expensive groceries were.
Yeah, they were.
To a high of, I eat soy yogurt, and the yogurt that I was paying $1.25 for, a small cup of yogurt, was $3
Right.
in California. So it was eye-opening, the amount that you could spend on groceries.
Right.
The least expensive place we had on the whole trip for groceries was actually in Wall, South Dakota. Their grocery store was very reasonably priced after all the sticker shock of the previous parts
Right.
of our trip. The amount I spent, and then we had eating out. And like I said a few minutes ago about mooch docking, what happened with the mooch docking was that the food budget
Would go way up.
would go way up because we were in cities like Portland,
Seattle.
Oregon, and Seattle, and so we were taking people out to dinner, and restaurants there, a nice restaurant,
Costs money.
costs a lot more than a grocery store.
And Salt Lake City.
Right.
Yeah.
But the other part of that is it's getting to see family and friends is worth
Right.
it. So it, it's a balancing act. It's
Right.
definitely a balancing act.
Definitely.
So getting down to the cost of groceries. Oh, and in the cost of groceries, I'm including the cost of things like ice, because we had to buy ice for the ice chest frequently. And
that varies wildly.
oh, amazingly.
Right.
And snacks that you would pick up to kind of keep yourself going at the grocery store. So that's a different category than fuel.
Right.
The cost of meals, oh, and one other thing, sundries like doing laundry. I included that in the kind of household needs budget.
Oh, okay.
So I put the laundry in there because we did do laundry.
So it's food, laundry,
Food,
snacks.
housekeeping, and snacks
Yeah.
type
Okay.
expenses. The total of all those things added together is $2,542.85.
Okay, and that's, remember, 61 days.
So that's 61 days of meals and laundry and ice and just the things of everyday living.
Right.
That is $41.69 per day. And this is where it gets really interesting. So the cost that I spent on fuel was not even $1 different. It was $2,542.24 for a cost of $41.68 per day on fuel.
Wow.
So food and fuel
We're about the same.
were about the same per day.
Wow.
I thought that was interesting.
That is interesting.
But the food cost could have been significantly lower,
Yes.
or it could have been significantly higher had we eaten more meals out.
Yes.
We mostly ate in,
Right.
but the eating out that we did was at nicer restaurants. So
Right. And the other part about the fuel thing is if you stayed at places longer and didn't travel, I mean, we didn't travel every day, but we traveled every few days for sure. So, this was kind of a vacation trip, so and we're not living full time. So if you're living full time on the road, you will likely moderate your budget by traveling less
going a shorter distance.
or
Obviously.
going a shorter distance.
No, you would have to go. The only way to do it is to go a shorter distance.
And don't jump around quickly because when your vehicle's sitting, it's not using fuel. So
right.
Yeah.
The longest we stayed anywhere was 4 days.
yeah.
So
We were moving a fair amount.
So we were moving a fair amount.
Right.
So if you add up the cost per day of campground of $23.76, meals at $41.69, and fuel at $41.68, it works out to $111.84 per day.
Per day. Okay.
For a total cost of $6,822.03.
Okay.
So $6,800 plus or minus a bit.
Right.
Okay. This does not include money spent on souvenirs.
Okay.
We were pretty frugal with souvenirs, considering it was a 16-state visit. We kept ourselves limited to magnets, because we can put magnets on our refrigerator,
Right.
and postcards, which we mailed
Right.
out to people. And I think we got a t-shirt apiece. I think.
I might have got a couple.
You might have got a couple.
Yeah, maybe.
So, and we have our 3-year-old granddaughter, Alice, at home. And so we bought things to stick in a little backpack for Alice.
Right. Right. That was important.
So we spent less than $500 on souvenirs. Oh, and things to bring home to family
Right.
here in Houston.
Right.
So overall, we spent about, let's see, I can look up the actual number from my handy dandy chart here. $7,288.77.
Right. And if you divided that up on a monthly basis, do you have it? I guess you could divide it.
I
in half.
didn't divide it out, but you could divide it in half.
Right.
And it would be about $3,600.
Right. So about $3,600 a month, which is a little bit of money.
Right. Now, if we were spending $1 less per gallon for gas,
That would
that
help.
would have helped a lot. That would have saved $550.
Okay.
That would have brought our costs down quite a bit.
Right.
So if we
Right.
were traveling right now, it would cost us a bit less.
Right. So the exact same trip would actually cost less
Right now,
right
probably.
now.
But we
Right.
might spend the money on something
Yeah,
else. Who
right.
knows?
Yeah, right. Right. If you're right. That
Right,
might happen.
right. And some of the decisions we made, Lewis did all the route planning, or most of the route planning.
Right.
And some of the decisions that we made were based on, for example, we stayed much longer in Salt Lake. We stayed 4 nights in Salt Lake City, and we would not have done that if there were not family in Salt Lake.
Correct.
That said, the KOA in Salt Lake is about the only place to camp. There's very limited camping in that area, and they have a captive market,
Right.
and the KOA charges like that. So
Yes,
that
they
KOA
do.
was an expensive place to stay.
Yes.
That said, there was a KOA in, was it Miles City, Montana?
Yes.
That was a marvelous place to stay.
Right. That was a good one.
It was really good. It was within walking distance of town, and there was a lovely park to visit
Right.
in the town. Their laundromat was great,
Right.
and it cost, I don't know, did I spend $250 a load? It was just really inexpensive
Right.
to do laundry there. So that was really good. And we had dinner at the Montana bar,
Right.
and it was
That was fun.
a lot of fun. It's a beautiful building. That was
Right.
one of the highlight stops.
Right.
Unexpected.
Right.
And we ended up there after one of the campsites that we were intending to go to was flooded out.
Right. We had planned on camping, I think
We were going to a city park.
it was a city park, right? There were two possible city parks that I looked at for staying, and you couldn't make reservations. You had to just show up. So we showed up, and they were closed, and both of them are closed because of the flooding in Yellowstone. The
Right. We weren't
Yellowstone
anywhere-
River. Well, the Yellowstone River flows north right there, and so even though we were in Montana, the Yellowstone River was going over its banks and affecting these campgrounds that were on the banks.
They were far east of where the
Right.
flooding was happening in Yellowstone. Because,
Right.
of course, you'll remember that in mid-July in Montana and Wyoming, the Yellowstone River was flooding out of its banks in a way that's never happened before. It was just historic levels of flooding.
Right.
And that just happened to be the same time that we were in Montana.
Right. It just happened to
So-
be. We yeah. And so yeah. So we had to adapt. That's one of the places we had to, and actually a lot of times KOAs for us are campgrounds we use when we figure there isn't much of another option, because we look at where we're going, we look at the campgrounds in the area. If we can't get a campground of another type in the area, then we'll opt. And a KOA is always kind of usually a safe bet, because KOAs kind of have a certain way of doing things, and so they typically have laundry, and they typically have bathrooms, and typically they're
Well,
kept
and
up.
that would be one of the reasons for choosing a KOA.
Correct.
Is if you needed to get the laundry done.
Correct. It would be a reason.
Right.
Right. And we used that as a reason. And then, yeah, so we But there are campgrounds like the one we're in right now is a state park. It's in Arkansas, and we like state parks, and we like COE parks, and we like city and county parks because we've experienced them, and we definitely love national parks. And so, yeah, so that's one of the things we learned on this trip is that I mean, KOAs come in useful when they're needed, but they're also kind of pricey, which brings up your cost of camping a fair amount. And we also did more of the Boondockers Welcome and the Harvest Host on this trip to help bring the cost of camping down.
Right, to bring some balance to it.
Yeah, and so it with all that, I mean, it worked out really well. We didn't have any. The only kind of not so great camping experience was a private campground in California, but what made that good was we had friends there. And
right, we were meeting up with friends there.
We were meeting up with friends, and so that kind of helped that be a more tolerable. If we were there by ourselves, we'd have probably tried to go somewhere else because it was a
we would have packed up and
yeah, it's a very odd campground. But yeah, is there anything else you can think of that is important?
I don't know. We did have one tire repair. We got a low tire.
Right. We had a upholstery tack in our tire.
Of all things.
And the only other thing that happened is the casita drain, the pot metal ring that holds the drain in place, stripped out, and I had to buy a sink strainer in Custer, South Dakota, and put a new sink strainer in the drain so the kitchen sink could be used and not leak. And so I did that.
We bought propane once.
Yes.
In Nevada, we bought propane.
Wasn't that in Salt Lake?
Nope, it was Nevada.
Oh, it was in Nevada. Oh, okay.
That was in Reno.
Oh, yeah, it was in Reno. That's right.
And that would have been in the miscellaneous household.
That was a cool propane
expenses.
place. It was a drive-through propane place. It's kind of interesting.
Shush Boom Brewing Company was the name of it.
Right. You just drive in and they fill them up.
That was really pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we had that one tire repair. We bought propane, but propane is kind of a grocery expense in my book.
Yeah.
Let's see. Is there anything else notable? I'm just kind of looking at my book. Oh yeah, and dog food was one of our grocery purchases.
Expensive. Right. Now is dog food in our grocery?
It's in our groceries.
Okay. And we just have one dog now, so the groceries, the amount of dog food we buy is a little less than it was because we had two dogs. So
he eats pretty well though.
Yeah.
So I included the cost of the repair parts.
Okay.
In the kind of miscellaneous everyday added, so that's added in.
Okay.
Because that would have been an expense nonetheless.
Yeah, it is an expense. Yeah, we're trying to give a reasonable figure for what you're actually spending. What if you're traveling on the road, what it actually costs.
Right.
That's what we're trying to do.
Right.
So you kind of get a realistic number.
So, well.
Anything else?
I don't think so. We've talked about money.
Okay.
So you can expect to spend probably $100 a day if you are kind of traveling, forward traveling. Right. You would likely spend a lot less if you were staying in one place.
Right. Yeah, and if you were staying in campgrounds where the cost was low and you were staying for many nights and not moving around, obviously that costs less money.
Right.
So you can, it's easier to make a month's budget um, lower when you
Right.
do that. That would be a way to do it. We're not in the, you know, full-time traveling category, so um, that's that wasn't where we were.
Right. And you
That
wouldn't
we
buy
weren't
as many
trying to do.
souvenirs.
No, you wouldn't buy as many souvenirs,
No.
and no, right.
Your
And
priorities would be different.
yeah, your priorities would be different, right? But that would be a way to, because people ask all the time about, can't you know, is there a way to lower the cost? Well, that would be a way. Um, it would definitely be a way. Because your camping fees. I mean, if you camped at KOAs and private campgrounds all the time, you would spend a lot of money on camping. You really would. So,
Mhm.
so it's best if you're trying to keep the cost down, that you try to, you know, stay at campgrounds.
You would want a boondock.
Right. And we are old enough to where we have the what I call the geezer pass, where we get 50% off in the COE campgrounds, and we also get a discount in the national parks. So that helps also because your
Right.
campground fees are discounted.
Right.
So,
So like I said, your mileage may vary,
right,
but this is kind of a rough picture
right,
of what you could do a trip for.
right. Okay, Katie. Well, we'll see you in the next video.